Hello, everybody. Today we are starting a new series to answer one question: how to get into real estate. My name is Mateo Quintanilla, and my goal is to answer this question for myself and, more importantly, to anyone watching who wants the answer to this question. For our first guest, I'm lucky enough to have one of the top mortgage brokers in all of Houston. His name is Kelso, and he's been in the business for nearly 3 decades. He knows the business inside and out, and I'm so lucky to have him on the show today. Let's see what he has to say.
Kelso, thank you so much for being on the show today with us.
Absolutely. I am so glad to be here, by the way.
Yes. So can you tell me a little bit about your story? How did you end up here? How did you start off? What was the challenges you had starting off as a mortgage broker?
As a mortgage broker. So, I got into the business sort of a weird way, right? So I don't think anybody actually gets in the mortgage business planning to get in the mortgage business.
Right.
They always get in the mortgage business because they knew somebody or somebody told them to get in, et cetera. So in my case, actually, my sister was in the mortgage business. And she got my dad in the mortgage business. My dad got me in the mortgage business because he happened to come down here to Houston. He was living in Dallas at the time, coming down to Houston. We went out and visited some clients together. Loved what he was doing. At that time, I was actually working for some transnational companies. I was doing a lot of consulting, a lot of implementation of some cost management strategies across the board. And I just liked the viral aspect and of being able to sit down at somebody's desk, like what we're doing right now, and having a conversation. And I sort of fell in love with that aspect because, in business, you got multiple types of things you do in business. You have the ones that you can really impact somebody on a day-to-day basis, and you got the big businesses that it takes years to possibly see the work that you do. And so I like the fact that I could sit down with somebody and make their dreams come true in a very easy time frame, but something that I can actually see on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So the short answer, my sister got me into it, through my dad, and then I was actually not really thinking about this as a business. I was actually originally thinking, okay, great. My dad said, come on in, make some extra money. And what I ended up doing is I ended up coming in and saying, hey, this is actually a career. This is actually a business somebody can get involved with. But, like I tell everybody, if you're passionate about what you do, it's not work. If you love what you do, it's not work. And so that's sort of what's happened is I love what I did. I loved helping people. I loved helping people get into homes, find the right financing for them. And so it's become something I've loved doing. And I thank my sister and my dad, who's no longer with us. I thank him for getting me involved with the business.
Yeah.
And wouldn't be here without them right now.
Of course. So you're the person behind getting the people to finance their real estate investments, right?
That is correct.
Yes.
So I would say the following, not just real estate investments, right? So if you look at real estate in general, everyone has to have a place to live. That start off with. Whether you rent a place or you buy a place or you live with a friend, that friend's going to have to either live or buy or rent or do something right there. So what we do financing for anybody who wants to buy real estate, and that can be for their primary residency, that can be for their investment property, that can be for a second home. Let's say they want to buy down in Galveston or Florida or California. It can be somebody who wants to build a career associated with rental properties. Maybe they want to buy properties and rent those over a period of time. It can be fix and flips. Individuals want to buy property and then, let's say, put some money into them, fix them, and then flip them, meaning if they're going to resell them as well. We do all types of financing for residential and commercial properties. Mainly residential is what I focus in on. And the residential side, what we do is the residential is considered anything 1 to 4 units, meaning if you're buying a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex, or a single-family home, or a condominium, or let's say land, or a manufactured home, all those fit within the financing realm of what we do.
Right.
Whether it be buying for yourself in the future or you're buying it to be able to invest in the future, that's all the financing that we do.
Right. So can you tell me about the difference between investment property loans and standard home loans?
Okay. So very, very good question, by the way, because one of the things I would say is that the simplest of answers I can give is an investment property loan is going to be a loan that you're going to do for a property you're not planning on occupying.
Right.
And a standard residential loan is, generally speaking, one that you're planning on occupying, whether it be full-time as your primary residency or part-time as, let's say, a second home. Okay. Now, here's the big differences that exist between them. If you're buying a home as your primary residency, you're going to have a better interest rate, number one, because you're going to occupy the residency as your primary residency, which means you're going to have a lower down payment. You're going to have a better interest rate. You're going to have better terms because ultimately the bank sees is you're not going to let go of your principal home that easy, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of those things, they're going to reward you by having a primary residency. And then on the other side, an investment property requires more money down and requires a little bit more interest rate. And the reason why, it's a higher risk, right? Because let's assume that the economy goes to crap and you can't pay on one of the two mortgages.
Right.
Which one are you not going to pay on first?
You're not going to pay on the investment property.
The investment
Yeah.
property first, right?
Yeah.
So the banks have to put a premium on the fact is, guess what? You're not going to pay this one first if something goes bad with you. So they require more money down, generally 15 to 20% down. They have higher interest rates, generally about a point to a point and a half higher if you got great credit, and it could go even higher than that. And the terms sometimes can change a little bit from that perspective. They're both great programs, and they're both 30-year fixed-rate mortgages or 15-year fixed-rate mortgages or anything in between. You can also do an adjustable-rate mortgage, but that's the main difference that exists between those two. Now, a great investment strategy, if you're looking at getting into the investment side of things,
Right.
and you're young enough, I tell everybody all the time, the greatest way to build wealth in the United States of America is through real estate. And I will challenge anybody who doesn't believe me on that. Now, second biggest thing is compounding interest, right? So if you if you invest a penny every day and it doubles every single day, you're going to have millions of dollars, right?
Right.
And so what real estate does, though, it allows you to park money into a real estate transaction, and then over a period of time get what they call appreciation, right? So you got to have a place to live. You might as well buy a place, let it appreciate over a period of time. Instead of renting, you're sort of paying yourself. And over a period of time, when you sell it, you've got the equity you put into it, plus the equity it's appreciated at. Okay.
Right.
And whereas an investment property, what you can a lot of times, why I love investment properties as well, is you're going to buy that property, but then somebody else is going to be paying your mortgage for you, while you again accumulate equity and get to take advantage of that appreciation over a period of time. So they're both great investments to make. And if I was somebody young like you, I would start off at the very beginning, try to buy an investment, try to buy a primary residency. So here's a little trick of the trade. You buy a primary residency, you hold it for 2 years. And then at the end of the 2 years, you're already past your capital gains in that. If you have enough appreciation, you can sell it. But if not, you can keep that as a rental property. You only
Right.
put 5% into it.
Yeah.
And then you buy a second home as your primary residency. Then you keep that one, you rent it out. And then if you do that enough times, starting at 18, 19, 20 years old, by the time you're 40, you've got 10 properties that you've only put a total of maybe 30% down in total. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of times, if you're buying investment property, you're putting 20% down.
Yeah.
So imagine I can show you at 18 years old how to buy 10 properties over the next 20 years, and still every single time only put 5% down on those investment properties, because what you're doing, you're having a lag time of 2-year period after every single one of them right there. So it's pretty cool stuff right there. I mean, I love financing and showing individuals how they can accumulate and build wealth the right way over a period of time.
Right. So when you want to invest in a property, you obviously have to buy it, right?
Right.
So one way to buy it, to get the money to buy it, is what you were talking about right there. What are some other ways you can get the money to invest in a property?
So, if you were to look at the traditional, you have what they call traditional and non-traditional ways, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, you also have something called wholesaling out there. So you got multiple things you can look at. So the traditional way is for me. You come to me, you say, I want to buy an investment property. I say, do you have any money to put down? You say, yes. I say, great, how much? You say, I got 20%. Great, let me find the best deal for you based on that 20% down and what you qualify for. And that might be if you're self-employed, or you might want to do what they call a DSCR loan or a bank statement loan or traditional. I'm going to find that for you.
Right.
But let's assume you come to me and say, hey, Chris, I want to buy a home, an investment property, but I don't have any of the traditional mechanisms. I will say this. There's a lot of different ways to buy homes, but you always have to at least have the initial money down when it comes to an investment property. Okay? So an investment property, even if you were to go to a seller, what they call owner financing, or DSCR, which is debt service credit ratios, or bank statement loans, you still have to have the money to put down. Now, there are some cases in which you can go out there, if it's your primary residence and you don't have any money, you might be able to find somebody who says, you know what, I'll do seller financing for you. So I understand is you don't have any money to put down, but you want to occupy it as your primary residency. I'm going to seller finance this for you. And as part of the seller financing, you don't have to put money down, but guess what you do have to do? You do have to pay a higher interest rate to me, because I'm going to make it up on the interest rates, right? I will say the days, so I've been in the business since 2020. 2020 was a really good year, but 2000. The days of 2000 to 2007, when you used to be able to buy a home with 100% financing, are gone. Those went away after 2008. So 2007, 2008 when the entire industry sort of went through a change, that 100% financing went away. Now, everyone's been asking, is it going to come back? Is it going to come back? Well, that's why right now the economy is moving a little bit, and it's changing. That's why the real estate market is still so strong, because we took away all 100% financing. So what you used to be able to do in 2020, or 2000, is go out and buy without the 20% down. Nowadays, you can't do it. You have to have money down on an investment property or on a primary residency.
Right.
Now, the only difference is on your primary residency, I can get you some down payment assistance. I can get you some grant money. I can get you into a home with 100% financing if you're going to occupy it. But if you're going to invest in it, you have to have money down. That is just the reality of today's market.
Yeah.
And I don't think 100% financing is ever really going to come back on the investment market. It killed the market in 2008, and we're probably not going to ever see that come back again.
Right. So you mentioned 2020 was a very good year for you?
2020 was a good year for the industry.
Right.
Right, because, if you go back to the history of what sort of happened, in fact, if you had bought a home in 2019, okay, by the end of 2020, that home at the end of 2020 was already 30% higher than what you bought it in 2019, 1 year higher, 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had waited for 2 more years, that home would have appreciated another 30%.
Yeah.
Homes in Houston went up on average by about 57%. Imagine that, 57%. Wow. So if I bought a $200,000 home in 2019, I was selling it for over $300,000 whenever it came, or pretty close to $300,000 when it came to 2022, beginning of 2022. And then the market stabilized. So now we've been in stabilization as far as that goes. Prices really hasn't risen a whole bunch, and they haven't gone down either. It's just been a stable market. And that's because interest rates have moved. Interest rates went from an average of 3% to an average of 7.5%. So what you're going to see is when rates move up, right, one thing that ends up happening is prices start stabilizing. But what we have seen over the past 30 days is rates are going back down right now. Okay. So when rates go back down, guess what happens to home prices?
They
move up.
Yeah, they move up.
They start moving up. So that's what we're starting to see again. We're going to see probably this time next year is another acceleration in the market because rates are slowly now moving back down. And when they start moving back down, it puts a lot more people into the buying pool. And the more people come into the buying pool, that's when home prices start rising a little bit.
Right. So in this part of the business, the way the market fluctuates, it impacts it a lot, right?
It does. I mean, like anything. I mean, the market's always being impacted by supply and demand. I mean, that's just the reality. Supply and demand impact any business. I don't care if you're selling a widget, you're selling a home, you're selling a vehicle. I mean, look at what vehicles have done. In fact, I was speaking to a buddy of mine the other day. I mean, the used car market last year was booming. Mm-hmm. My Ford F-150, I could have sold it for $60,000, right?
Yeah.
My Ford F-150 today, I can sell for $40,000. It's gone down $20,000 in trade-in value over basically about a 9-month period, right? Mm-hmm. And so like anything, right, because there's been supply and demand. What happened, though, during that time frame? In 2020, everything got closed down. They stopped producing cars. They stopped producing watches. They stopped producing homes. They stopped producing stuff for a little while.
Yeah.
And then everybody came back in when all that money fluctuated in, and you couldn't produce enough of it, right? So what happens is you use a car or home, prices move up. But once demand goes down again, prices go back down. Now, in this case, what happened is in homes, it just stabilized. In cars, it went down. And so that's, again, if we ever see an acceleration like that again, you'll see prices then will move back up right there, right?
Right. So what do you change when the market changes? Do you switch anything?
Very good question. Yeah. Here's the one thing I tell everybody from a business perspective, right? The biggest thing you have to change whenever the market changes is you have to change your overhead. You have to change your cost to match the market. That's no matter who you are, what you do, right?
Right.
So in business in general, what you always have to look for is what fixed overhead do you have, right? The best way to operate a business is to operate under variable cost, right? Because variable costs move up or down according to how your business moves up. If you sell more, you're going to have more costs. If you sell less, you're going to have less costs. That's always the best way. But you have certain things like we're sitting in my office today. It's a fixed rent, right? So I have a fixed cost. No matter what, I have to pay my rent every single month. Right?
Right.
So whether the market is an incredible market or a crappy market, my rent is due. Same amount, same place, every single month. And so that's one of the biggest things that people have to do is you have to look at those fixed costs every year, right? And that's a good business strategy. Always looking at your fixed costs, seeing what you have to do when it talks to business. And then what we did this year, we simply looked at everything and said, man, COVID shut down everything. And then when COVID opened up, when the market opened back up, nobody wanted to go back into offices. So we ended up closing out a lot of our offices because, again, it was overhead number one. You got to close out overhead. But if you have overhead that's not being utilized, you got to get rid of it. So that's probably the biggest thing that we did. When the market moved, we moved with it. And what we did is we looked at our cost, looked at our fixed overhead, looked at our people, we looked at our products. You always are evaluating. You're always evaluating what can you do to, number one, not sacrifice the client experience, but number two, make sure that you are in cost, in a cost perspective to be able to continue to service those clients. Because if you're broke and you're out of business, you don't have any clients anymore.
Right.
So you want to make sure you always manage it not to be broken out of business.
Yeah. So when you find a new potential client, what are the indicators you look at to see if he's damn, I forgot what I was going to say. Right. So what are the most important indicators that you look for to show if someone is credit worthy?
So, one of the things, you're from Mexico.
Right.
I'm from Mexico. We've known each other there forever, by the way. When you were a kid, obviously.
Yeah.
Even before credit, you knew credit existed, right? And so in the United States and in Mexico and any place, credit is still king, okay? And so the very first thing we look at is any borrower who comes in is what do you currently have established credit-wise? Do you have credit, right? And how do you establish credit here in the United States? It's super easy. You get a credit card, you buy a car on credit, you buy a home on credit.
Right.
You buy something on credit. It could be you go to FAMSA and buy something in FAMSA or Star Furniture or Walmart. It could be one of 1,000 different places. But you have to buy something on credit. And then once you open that credit and you buy something on credit, you got to pay for it. So then you got to pay for it on a timely manner, right? So you got to pay for it every single month. This is one of the big fallacies that is not taught in schools. I wish it was, right? Because one of the things I believe wholeheartedly in. Then you got to pay for it, and you got to pay for it over a period of time. Now, the one thing about credit is, and this is about establishing credit, you always want to maintain no more than the 30% balance based on whatever limit they give you. And you want to make sure that you're paying everything on time. That's how credit is established. Your 67% of your credit score depends on how much you owe as compared to how much you have available for you, and have you been paying on time. So the first thing we look at in the mortgage company is, do you have credit? Have you established credit? And if so, how long is that credit, right? If you only established credit 2 months ago, and I see you have a credit card you paid on, but it's only 2 months old, I don't have enough to establish credit, so I have to get what they call alternative trade lines. Do you pay on a cell phone? Do you pay electricity? Do you pay water? Do you pay something that you've paid over the past 12 to 18 months that I can establish a payment history on, right?
Yeah.
And we have a lot of clients that come to us that are Latin Americans who don't necessarily have credit established in the traditional ways. So it's called non-traditional credit, which is what I'm talking about. But that's the number one factor we look at is, where does your credit currently stand? And then the second thing we look at when someone comes to us is not only the credit, but is the ability to repay. How are you going to repay this mortgage? I don't care if it's a primary or an investment property. How are you going to repay it based upon the job that you have? So then we look and say, okay, great. Do you have a job? How much do you earn? How much do you owe? How much do you have in monthly payments? Can you afford this based on your debt-to-income ratio, also known as a DTI?
Okay.
And if you can afford to pay for that and your debt-to-income ratio is within the levels, generally has to be less than 50% debt-to-income ratio, then we can move on to the third opportunity, which is, okay, great. What is the payment going to be based on the interest rate, the down payment, et cetera, et cetera? But the very first thing we look at is credit. Absolutely. It's always what we look at right there. Because if you don't have credit, you can't buy anything. I can just tell you that right there. And then number two is making sure they have the right credit established. Because if you don't have the right credit established, that's also going to hurt you. And contrary to popular belief, no credit is no good. Like,
Right.
a lot of us Latin Americans, right? They're like, yo pago todo en efectivo, right? I pay everything in cash, right? And so what ends up happening is like, okay, great. You pay everything in cash, and I agree. But cash is not king when you need credit. It's not. And so a lot of times our Latino Americanos, we have to talk to them and say, you got to establish credit. I understand you pay everything in cash. I know you want to pay everything in cash.
Yeah.
But you got to establish some credit right there. And I would say you being a young individual, that's one of the biggest things you could do is right now start establishing credit. And you start establishing credit in a very small way, which is maybe you, and here's what I would say to younger individuals, and I would tell this to their parents as well. Take somebody like you, and guess what? I'm going to add you to one of my good credit cards, and I'm going to start establishing credit on my one credit cards. All it means is I'm going to have you piggyback on my good credit, right?
Right.
Then eventually you're going to have to open up your own credit cards, and I go and get what they call a secured credit card. Maybe I'm going to put a $500 deposit down, and you're going to have a secured credit card. But the sooner you start credit at 17, 18, 19 years old, the better you're going to be over a longer period of time, because now you have history established. You've got a payment history established with it. You've got time behind you in regards to it. And it shows that you've established credit at a young age. It's really good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different ways to establish credit. You just have to start. You have to start. And parents can be one of the best ways to help you establish credit.
Right. So how would I, right now, say like tomorrow, start building credit?
So the number one thing, I'd go to Puppy.
Right.
I'd talk to Tio Toti, in your case, just Dad.
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, Dad, Chris told me you got to give me a credit card. No. So what I would do is I would actually go to my parents, and I'd say, hey, Mom and Dad, I just heard this great podcast, and it gave me some really good ideas, and I need to go with you about this, right? And what I would do, I'd go to my parents first and foremost and say, Mom and Dad, I want to start establishing credit. I want to be a steward of good credit.
Okay.
And being a steward of good credit means I need to start establishing my own credit. But I know, being 16, 17, 18 years old, I might not get anything. So can you do me a favor? Number one, can you grab one credit card that is good? Now, the reason why I say it's good, let's say Mom and Dad have a credit card that they didn't pay on time, or they missed a payment, or something happened to it, or it has a large balance on it. That's going to look bad for you, right? Because then you're going to pay back on their bad credit. So as long as your parents have good credit, you go to them and say, can you add me as an authorized user on your credit card? Okay, that's all I want you to do. Add me as an authorized user on your credit card. I'll even give you the credit card back. I won't use it, Mom and Dad. What that's going to do is, by you being an authorized user, it's going to pay back your credit. So now, even though your parents are paying for it, etc., you now got a credit card that's established in your name that goes underneath your credit. Okay,
Right.
So that's the first way I would do it. Second thing I would do, once I get a piggyback credit card, the second thing I would do, I would establish what they call a secured credit card. So there's a lot of good places online. I can give it to you later on. But on the secured credit cards, when you go and you make a $500 deposit or $1,000 deposit or whatever you want to, and then you're borrowing against the money you have on deposit, but they're reporting it as credit. Okay? So now you have a $500 deposit. They're reporting it as credit right there, and that's sort of the process that you make happen from that perspective. So that would be the second way I would look at establishing credit, right? So once you have a secured credit card, and once you have a piggyback credit card with your parents, the third thing is go to a location or go to a place like Walmart or Target. Now you have to have these two done first, okay? Go to Walmart, go to Target, go to some of these places like that, and then do a credit solicitation with them. And they might give you a $100 credit card or a $200 credit card. Don't use it. Again, don't use it. Go maybe once in a while and buy a piece of gum and then pay off the piece of gum, right?
Yeah.
But then that would give you three trade lines. One's a piggyback trade line. One is a secured credit card. The other is a full credit card. That's what you want to do to establish credit in this country. That's the best way to establish credit.
Right.
One thing I would say on any which cases, though, understand credit is just saying that you have to pay it back. That's all it is. So as a young individual, that's why I would do it this way. Keep the balances very low. And in most cases, I wouldn't even spend on it. I would once a month, I'd go out, say, okay, great, lunch on me. Spend $25, and I would turn around the next day and I'd pay off that $25.
Right.
It shows, because if you don't ever use the credit card, then it doesn't show you're using it. So you want to be able to use it, but you want to be able to pay it off as much as possible. You don't want to do carryover balances. Remember this also. Most individuals, the way credit card companies make their money is by you not paying off your balance every month.
Right.
So let's assume that you have a $300 balance. Okay, credit cards are charging 25% right now. Okay, so what's 20? Let's use 400. We'll make it a simple number. You owe $400, and so you only paid the minimum. So that $400 rolls over to next month. Well, 25% of $400 is $100, right? $100 divided by 12. That's now $8 worth of interest that's being put on that 400. So now instead of owing 400, you owe 408 in month one.
Yeah.
And then 416 on month two, or probably more like 418. And it just gets a little worse right there. Like, it just gets a little worse every time you do it.
Right.
So when you pay it off to zero, though, guess what interest rate they're going to charge you? Zero.
Yeah.
Because you've got no balance. So just make sure you keep a balance small enough that you can pay it off in full at the end of each month when it's due.
Okay. So establishing credit really helps with a potential mortgage in the future, right?
Absolutely, it does.
Yes. So what if me, as a 16-year-old kid in high school,
Right.
wants to get into the real estate investment business? How would I go about that? How would I start? Because if I don't have a credit right now, are
Right.
there any other paths to take?
You know, I hate to say it, so traditional financing, you've got to be 18 years old.
Right.
Right? So as a 16-year-old, what I would do is number one, this is me, I would get together with family and friends that I know, and I would say, hey, guys, I got an idea. I want to start making real estate investment. But I don't have the money and I don't have the credit, right? So number one is you form an LLC, right? So it's a limited liability corporation. So you form an LLC with somebody who does have credit and availability of either cash or investment, et cetera, right? You form an LLC, and then you buy homes through that LLC. But you have to have somebody in the LLC that can be what they call the aval, which is basically the promissory on that note, right?
Yeah.
So I would go to mom and dad. In this case, I'd go to dad and say, hey, Dad, I want to start buying homes. You know, I'm 16 years old. I'd like to do an LLC. I want to buy some investment properties. But you have to know, here's the one thing, and I would highly suggest taking a class that I can set you up with an individual who does a lot of this for all different ages of students. Number one, though, is you have to get with somebody who also understands real estate. Like, I hate to say it, the biggest mistake most people make at 16 and 17 is you think you know it all.
Right.
Oh, well, guess what? TikTok showed me I could do it, and I can get away with it. Hey, by the way, you know, Instagram said I can buy this home with no money out of pocket, right? Well, you know what Instagrams and TikTok does, right? I mean, they're there to sell you stuff, right?
Yeah, of course.
They're there to sell you a course. They're there to sell you a trick, or they're trying to get more people to view, because more people who view it on YouTube, etc. Guess what? They make money off of it. That's just reality. So the reality of investing is different than the fictitious personas that put out there about investing. And the reality is, yes, you can buy at 16. You can get together. I can show you somebody you can get together, and you can talk about getting in the market and doing what they call wholesaling, which is where you get a contract and then you're going to sell that contract. And so you're not really buying and selling real estate. You're buying and selling a contract, right?
Right.
A little bit different right there. But if you want to get in and start building a portfolio, you have to make sure, though, that you have somebody at 16 that's going to be sort of like your prestanombres.
Right.
Okay? Excuse me.
No problem. So do you have any other recommendations that I might be missing to?
You know, the biggest recommendation, I think I would say this. So I if I was to go back in time myself, right, and I was to go back to be 16 years old like you were, and I was here in the United States, and it's never too late to do this, right? Number one is, the very first thing I would do, I would say is, what do I have to do to set myself up with so that I'm not working when Theo's working at 50 years old? Like, what can I do to retire at those 33 and 40-year-olds that are doing, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is you're doing the right thing right now, asking the right questions, but then take action with those. So what I would have done, if I could go back in time, I would have taken action. I would have formed an LLC. I would have found individuals who would have invested with me. You know, you got crowdfunding nowadays, so you can probably even go out there and create an LLC, create a crowdfund, and say, hey, I'm a 16-year-old real estate investor. I'm looking at raising $20,000 for the purchase of a property, right? And I would do something like that, or get together with an investor, or go to, you know, Houston has some really good investment groups that you can go to, okay? I would go to some of these investment groups and learn more, and then find out maybe who might be interested in working with you or getting involved with, or who you trust. Again, no one's better than family, but I will say this, sometimes family's not the best either, by the way.
Right.
I know a lot of people get screwed by family.
Yeah.
But you want to find a way to invest at a young age, because the more you can invest at a young age, it compounds, right?
Yeah.
If you buy and sell a property today and you make $20,000, then that $20,000 gets put in another property, and the next property you make $40,000.
Right.
And then the next property you make $60,000. Then the next property you make $80,000. Then the next thing you know, you're not paying back money anymore. You're using your own money to buy the property, right?
Yeah.
So the sooner you can do that in life, the more it compounds over a period of time. And the biggest mistake, again, if I was to go back in time, I would have wish I had have learned about compounding interest or compounding investing a lot earlier in life, and I would have done it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Because I think that's sort of the biggest thing. But you got to do it the right way. Having these type of conversations are really good, by the way, because most people don't ask these questions. You know, as a 16-year-old, there's a lot of ways to make money. Now, there's a lot of influencers out there that make money. They make money through doing videos, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do drop shipping through Amazon. They make money as well. But the sustainability still is done through something like real estate or owning your own business
Right.
over a period of time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would do. I would get involved in real estate at a younger age. I would make sure you understand what you want to do and understand what type of investing. Do you want to do commercial investing? Do you want to do residential investing? Do you want to do single families? Do you want to do multi-units? If you want to do multi-units, what is the price range you want to stay within? What is your payback that you're looking at doing? What is the investment strategy you're looking at having? Do you want to invest for cash flow or for equity? And the reason why I say that is cash flow means I want to cash flow every month and make sure I'm making money every single month off of, my rents minus what I owe. Equity means I want to have somebody else build the equity in that property for me. I don't care if I make money on a monthly basis. I just want the equity over a period of time. That's a different strategy. So you also have to understand the strategies you want to do over that period of time to build that wealth. But that's what I would do. If I was 16 years old, I'd go back. What I know today, I'd go back and start investing. And here's the one thing. I would not invest in areas in which everybody else is investing right now.
Yeah.
Okay? Everyone's investing in Houston. Everyone's investing in Memorial, where we're sitting at right now, or in the Woodlands where you live, or anywhere you want to, right? I'd go to areas that I know growth is going to.
Right.
Go out to Sealy, Texas. Go up past Porter. Go to the east side of town. Go out to Waller County. I would be going out to areas which I know I can buy better priced homes, that the market's going to move that way over a period of time.
Exactly.
And if I could go back at my age and redo it again, I'd buy a crap ton of land. I would buy so much land because I have so many of my friends who bought land in West U, or they bought land in the Heights, or they bought land in areas in which you would say, oh my God, I'd never buy land there. And then 20 years later, that same land was worth millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I can use my time that I had, I
That is
started
correct.
early.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on, I don't have too much money, I have more time, right? Which
That is correct.
Arguably more important.
Absolutely so.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Let me get some water. Hold on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
¿Qué otras preguntas se te ocurren?
Pues le estaba a punto de preguntar de los libros.
Okay.
Okay.
Sí. Go, go, go.
Okay. So, let's see. What was I saying? So obviously, to start off to real estate, to learn how to get into the real estate business,
Right.
you have to learn a lot. So do you recommend any books? Do you have any recommendations?
It depends, right? It depends on what aspect of real estate. If you want to become a real estate agent, I'd read One by Gary Keller. I think it's a great book right there, right? The Real Estate Millionaire book. If you're looking at investing in real estate as a passive type investment right there, at the end of the day, I hate to say it, is the best way to get involved is to speak with people who are doing it, who have failed and succeeded at it.
Yeah.
Anybody who succeeded at real estate has failed at least in real estate as well, right? And so, book-wise, I actually would read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of my favorite books out there. I'd read some books associated with, I love another one that says exactly what to say, which is how to speak with people.
Right. You have recommended that one.
Yeah, I've recommended that one before to you. So there are some things like that is what I would actually read. I would be reading some things because, if you're going to get into wholesaling, Exactly What to Say is a great book because wholesaling, you're convincing individuals to give you an opportunity to put their home under contract so you can sell it, right? If you're actually buying a property that you're going to flip, that's a different aspect. If you're actually becoming a realtor, well, then the millionaire next door, the millionaire real estate agent is probably, one is probably what you want to read right there. So, again, it sort of depends on what aspect of real estate you're looking at doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good books out there. I don't necessarily read finance books or real estate books. I read business books. I read life books. I mean, I think that's more important to do because at the end of the day, real estate is a business. You have to treat it as a business. I don't care whether you're working as a realtor, as a loan officer, as an investor, as a title rep, as anything. It's a business. You have to look at it as a business. So everything that you want to do, make sure you understand the business fundamentals when you're getting into the market.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, so that seems to be about all my questions. My final one is, how can people get in touch with you for your services?
So probably the best way to reach me is always on my cell phone, 713-256-9138. They can also email me. My personal email is chris.kelso@nafinc.com. NAF stands for New American Funding, so nafinc.com. By the way, text me, email me, go find me on TikTok, go find me on Instagram, go find me on Facebook. You type in Chris Kelso or Christopher Kelso, and you'll find me everywhere right there. And the biggest thing I tell everybody, the biggest mistake most people have in this life is they're afraid to ask the question. If I ask a question, will I look dumb? Will I feel stupid? Is it a dumb question? The dumb question is the question you don't ask.
Yeah.
So the one thing I tell everybody all the time is don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to inquire about something, right? Just ask the question, because I'd love to answer it if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, guess what? I'll guide you to somebody who knows it better than I do. Because that's the one thing I say is nobody ever knows anything. The day you stop learning is the day we're all dead, right? So we all don't know everything. But everybody does know somebody they can refer over to you who might know the question if it's a question they can't answer. So that's probably the biggest thing. I love an opportunity to answer any question for anybody who's looking at investing or buying their own property, or the strategy associated with buying primary residencies over a period of time, or commercial. I mean, commercial is a whole different segment you can do in the future, by the way, from that perspective. But just, I would say is real estate is still something I'm passionate for. Financing is something I'm passionate for right there. And don't be afraid to get started. Don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being the very first guest on the very first episode of this new series that I'm going to start.
Oh, I appreciate you asking me. I love it. And great setup, by the way.
Thank you.